Okay, hello and welcome to Day One Patch Podcast, episode 503. I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. Tim Spence.
I'm here.
The Tim Spence.
The very same.
The one and only Tim Spence.
There are many.
The sidetrack.
There's only one of me.
The man with no name. The infamous.
You just said a bunch of names, though.
That's the thing.
Oh, God.
He's a man with no name, but a man of many names.
Sounds like a riddle.
You've been called many things over the ages.
Over the millennia? Like I'm some 1,000-year-old eldritch being?
You've held many names.
Just pick a new name every couple decades.
The ancient one. You're the ancient one.
The prophesized one.
Yeah. So it's just you and me, and
right.
Matt left us with a big ol' video game fun fact.
That's right.
I was not prepared for this big ol' video game fun fact.
It does. It even says at the top of the article. It says "big ol' fun fact" right here.
Big ol' fun fact.
It's there in the notes.
So I guess we'll just dive in. I don't know what 27 means. What is 27? This isn't the 27th?
Is it? It
fun
might
fact.
be.
But yeah, this
anyway.
This video game fun fact is motion controls on Sega Genesis.
Oh yeah. You want to do it?
Back in the early. Oh, I mean, if you want to do it, feel free.
I can do it because you haven't been through it yet, right?
No.
All right. I was looking it up too. I was looking at pictures. Actually, go on Google and look this thing up. Yeah. Yeah, so motion controls in the early 90s, I think 1993 specifically, there were some forays into it in gaming, and this one was by Sega for the Sega Genesis. In the early 90s, they decided that they wanted to try their hand at motion gaming via a unique controller for the Sega Genesis called the Sega Activator. And if anyone's listening to this, I want you to, if you can, go on Google and look up Sega Activator, because this thing looks like literally nothing. It looks like the kind of thing that would be in your parents' basement when you go back 10 years later, and it's just not even in its original box. It's all just broken down, and all the pieces are just jumbled in a box, a big Tupperware box with wires and crap. It literally looks like just plastic nothing. So anyway, in terms of its design and technology, it's literally just an octagonal ring that sits flat on your floor, and you stand in the middle of it. As far as sensors, each side of this octagon projects an infrared beam upward, and when the player's hands or feet interrupt a beam, it registers that as a button press. So, the technology is fairly rudimentary, but it's kind of advanced in terms of, a extra gaming peripheral.
Mm-hmm.
And then for the button mapping, each of those sides of the octagon would correspond to a different button on the Genesis controller, which is your A, B, C, your start, your different D-pad directions. And then did the Genesis controller have numbers on it too? Some of them did, I guess, the arcade one. But anyway, so you might look at this thing and think what games would be for motion controls? When we think of motion controls now, we think of VR, and we think of things where it's the games are built around this input. But that, of course, obviously didn't exist back then. So it's purely just a different form factor for controlling your games. And the target audience for these primarily was fighting games, like Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter 2, and how it worked.
Streets of Rage,
little 2D side scrolling. And I guess it was marketed that players could physically punch, they could kick, and they would move within this ring to control the character as if they were mimicking real life combat movements. As far as the practicality of such a thing, I mean, even when the Wii came out, motion controls were still fairly rudimentary. So we're talking 20 years before that even. In terms of your space requirement, it needed a large open space because you needed to be able to stand comfortably inside the octagon and also have room to move, kind of modern VR stuff today. But the biggest problem was that it was very picky with accuracy. So the infrared beams that come up from each of the sides of this octagon around you were really finicky, and they often failed to register movements correctly unless the player inside the ring was positioned very precisely and moved in specific ways. So not only was it not designed for you to move organically within it, the games are not designed around motion controls, and you have to do it in a very specific way to even make sure your inputs are registering properly. So it really just sounds like a big headache. It's not even, it almost feels like it was just a gimmick, and they did not engineer it to be viable at all.
Yeah.
And it was also really complex to even set it up. So like players would have to calibrate it very specifically to even ensure proper alignment with their movements. So in terms of the assembly of it, it came in multiple pieces that had to be assembled into the octagonal shape to ensure each segment was correctly connected to complete the circuit. So each section had to be positioned in the like perfectly correct orientation and snapped into place for these infrared beams to work correctly. If they weren't, obviously if the connections weren't proper, then some of your beams just aren't going to work and your controller's not even, working, even if you were doing all the inputs perfectly.
Yeah.
In terms of calibration, once it was actually assembled, players would have to calibrate the activator to align the infrared sensors with their body movements. The problem with that is that the calibration involved adjusting the distance and height of the player from the activator. Standing too close or too far would interfere with the beams, obviously, causing inaccurate inputs, even though you do want to be interacting with the beams because that's the whole point of the button input. It also had to be on a completely flat surface. If it was like even slightly uneven, it would totally disrupt the sensor alignment. Because when you think, right, like if it's a beam straight up and then it's angled ever so slightly, that beam is now going either toward you or away from you or some random angle, right?
Yeah.
And the further away it is, the further away that beam is like from you being able to physically reach it, right?
Yeah.
So again, similarly to like what we consider to be modern motion control gaming, like with VR and stuff, to use it effectively, you need a large open area free of obstacles. A cramped or cluttered space could cause the beams to be blocked unintentionally or even reflect inaccurately off of nearby objects. So it's like, they really want a sterile environment for you to be playing this in.
A lab. You need to be in the lab.
You need to be in the lab. You need to be in the padded cell because you'd be insane to own this thing. The player needed to have a full range of movement, meaning not only was space inside the octagon important, but also extra space around it to allow for your kicks and wide arm movements to go beyond it. If you think of like when you're wearing a VR headset, you sort of have that like safe area where it'll show the like grid of walls where it's like, don't go beyond this. So just imagine that being there. So this was a big problem for it. So these infrared sensors were designed with the assumption that players would be of average height, standing upright in the center. So if you were taller or shorter than what they deemed the average, air quotes, you'd have to adjust your posture or stance to align correctly with these beams. So it's like, oh, sorry, you're a foot shorter than what we thought the player would be. You have to like stand as high as you possibly can and like punch and kick higher than what is comfortable and stuff like that.
What's funny about averages too is it means like people are like half are taller and half are shorter than the average.
Yeah.
And so making it the average actually kind of leaves a lot of people out.
You'd almost be better suited to go with tall or short.
Yeah.
And like for it being for a gaming console in the early 90s, you'd probably want to err on the side of short because kids,
yeah.
And kids are probably a lot more likely to engage in like physical activity like this for a game and are also probably a lot more forgiving of like the gimmick of it. They're just like fascinated that it even works at all. Like they're not focusing like how good it is. On top of all that, the activator also had a large cable that connected it to the actual console. And this cable had to be positioned in a way that wouldn't interfere with the player's movements, as stepping on it could disconnect the device, cause tripping hazards. I mean, it's standard cable stuff.
Yeah.
And on top of that, something we're also familiar with kind of semi-recent modern VR setups is that it had its own power source separate from the Genesis.
Oh my God.
So you also had to run another cable just to power it.
So what was it plugged into on the Genesis? One of the controller ports?
Probably,
or like where?
Yeah, because it would be a controller input, right? So
right, yeah.
Not only would you'd need the cable, this massive cable going to the console itself, but then a power cable running from the console to the wall. Also, your pad to the wall. Who knows how long this cable was? You might have needed to like reorganize your room so you could even have the length necessary to reach the power outlet.
Yeah.
Ridiculous. So for it, some specific games even required input mapping for the activator to work, and the players needed to set that up before playing the actual game. So this meant that not all Genesis games could be plug and play with the device. They had to be configured manually.
Oh my God.
Or they would just straight up be like, this controller doesn't work with this game.
Man, you get this thing on Christmas morning, and you're freaking spending the whole time calibrating and setting it up, and
I mean, you say that
organizing your room.
That's the reality today. Like that's what it is now. Like, but at the time, right? It's like when people harken back to the days where, like, remember when you got a game on Christmas morning and you could just slap it in your N64 and it would just work right away. You wouldn't need a day one patch. You wouldn't need to connect to the internet. You wouldn't blah blah blah. You could just play it right away. Yeah. So if we find it egregious now that we have to like download patches and we have to do all this shit, imagine in '93, people get this thing, they're like, fucking piece of shit, aligned properly, and
and his parents trying to do it,
and they don't
know technology,
they don't know it, and the kids are like, I want to play Street Fighter, and it's like, not now.
Yeah,
God, So, and here's the other thing too, right? Is like, because you could custom map the Octagon, the Activator. It didn't have like forward is A, left is B, right is C. Like they could be whatever they wanted. So the player had to memorize which beams were for which inputs, whether it was the D-pad or whether the buttons or whatever. So of course it's not going to be intuitive, especially if it's your first time like playing with it. Which is just another added like layer of complication on top of everything. And then as well, the infrared technology used by the Activator was highly sensitive to ambient lighting. So bright or inconsistent lighting conditions, like sunlight coming in a window, or if you had fluorescent lights in your basement or whatever, could obviously interfere with these sensors, causing false inputs or just straight up failures to even recognize movements. Sega specifically recommended certain lighting conditions and even suggested avoiding using the Activator near windows or under direct sunlight, further complicating setup requirements for optimal performance.
Wow.
So, yeah, the sales pitch is rough, right? Like, it feels like the kind of thing where they pitched the idea, but they didn't consider like the technical limitations and like the reality of the situation. It was part of their strategy to showcase innovation and trying to give their system like a technological edge over competitors, which of course it's the console wars. It's the like late 80s, early 90s. Yeah. Everyone's going for each other's throats. They're like, how can we one up the competition? What's my console got that Nintendo don't, you know? It was, so when it came out, it was seen as like a novelty, but most players who actually bought it found it unresponsive and very difficult to use effectively, leading to poor reviews and even more limited game support after the fact. So if you had to guess, Ryan, I don't know if you've looked at it, how much do you think this thing cost?
1993, was it?
Yeah. I'll even tell you, don't even like try to account for inflation, just say a number.
The first number that came into my head was 300.
Okay. 300 in 93 or 300 today?
In 93.
Okay. It's not that bad. It was $80 US.
Oh.
But when you think of it, that's pretty much the price of a full game, or more than. That's like the equivalent of another game for this peripheral that like kind of doesn't even really work. So it was a tough sell. It was a tough sell, and if people wanted to buy it, you know, likely the only way they'd hear about it was word of mouth. Maybe they saw it in like a magazine or a commercial, but it's expensive, and if they know anything about it, they know it's not responsive, it's not intuitive, it's a pain in the ass to set up, it's very finicky. So unsurprisingly, it did not do well.
I have to imagine it's one of those things where they develop it, they try it out, because they must have tried it.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And at some point, they probably said good enough.
Of course, yeah.
That it's just for kids. You know, we'll make $80 on each sale of this.
Yep.
And the kids will play it for a bit, and that'll be it.
It'll be the gimmick.
I wonder if it was just a cash-in kind of deal. You know?
I mean, despite that, right? It is pretty much like the pioneer of a concept like this. It's like it's motion control, but it isn't. You know, like it's. I gotta give him props. Like it's a creative way to get people to interact with the game differently. Like I like the pitch, having this ring around you that acts as if it's sensing your actual punches and kicks, and it makes your character in the game do punches and kicks. Like that is cool. You know, the player itself, they don't have to know how the sausage is made, right? They don't have to know the technical issues of it. They just know when I punch, Sub-Zero punches in the game, and that's cool.
Yeah.
It's just that like the execution was not. They didn't stick the landing with that. So, but I mean, you look at the gaming industry, and like it's pretty much remembered as the first real attempt at like motion control gaming, and of course would go on to sort of lead the way for other more successful technology. Like I mentioned, the Wii. I mean, it gets kind of a bad rap, but the Xbox Kinect, I mean, was based off of that. You have the PlayStation Move. You have
PlayStation iToy.
The iToy for the PS2. Yeah.
And I'm wondering if that was a similar situation where my memory of it is wrong, because I remember it being pretty good. I remember it like recognized my inputs, but maybe it wasn't that good. Maybe I just don't remember. Maybe I was just having fun because I was a kid.
Yeah. I had one other friend who had the iToy as well, and she, I think, remembers it fondly. I'll have to ask her if she remembers much.
I had a great time with it.
Yeah, I think it was just one of those things where, again, it was like those peripherals for consoles, even up to like the PS2 era, always felt very gimmicky. Like I think that peripherals and like accessories for consoles now are very normalized. It's very like people aren't surprised by it necessarily. But at that time, like people kind of wanted plug and play stuff. They wanted the console and the controller, and that was it. Like they didn't want anything else. Like there's obviously people have very fond memories about like the Game Boy getting the light and the added speakers and like the screen magnifier and all this like Frankensteining stuff onto your Game Boy to make it look like some sort of monster. I didn't know anybody with that stuff, but everybody remembers it very fondly, right? But again, I think most people, they didn't want all the bells and whistles. They just wanted to be able to play the game.
You want the path of least resistance when you're trying to have fun. You don't want a whole setup routine,
Yeah.
Maybe that's why the Wii was always seen as a party game. When you're having a party and friends over, you're willing to do more to achieve that entertainment, But when you're just alone, it's like, why do I need to wave my hands around in a room all by myself,
Yeah. It feels a little bit like excessive, right?
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. That being said, though, with the Wii, it was very minimal setup. It's like it's just the controller. It has like the built-in motion controls, and then you can also just use it like hold it sideways, and now it's like a SNES controller kind of thing. But but yeah, I mean that's the legacy of the Genesis Activator. Today, it's considered a pretty rare piece of retro gaming history, and it is actually a little bit sought after by collectors who have an interest in like the unique and experimental kind of gaming peripherals. I would like kind of consider myself definitely not like a collector, but definitely somebody who's interested in that era of like experimental stuff. I've said it multiple times in the podcast. I love when gaming companies try weird shit, because that's how you get innovations like motion controls and stuff in gaming. So I'm all about it. If I had the opportunity as a kid, I probably would have really liked this, but it was a little bit ahead of my time, right? I was born in 92. This thing came out in 93. The Genesis, even the NES, it's like it's a little bit before my time. But there was some good stuff back then, and I wish that sometimes I wish I'd been born a little bit earlier so I could have like been there on the ground floor to see some of this stuff and have the memories about it. But I mean, it's cool. It's cool stuff.
We're kind of like born in that generation that was lucky enough to have like all the modern technology advances that we've seen, but we were just after the start of it. You know what I mean?
We were there when it hit stride.
Yeah, there's people who are older than us who like remember all those NES games and SNES games and stuff like that, but we were a little after that,
Yeah. The SNES was out for a little while. It's actually some of my earliest like gaming memories, going to a friend's place when I was maybe 6 or 7, and his uncle brought over his Super Nintendo and he was playing Super Mario Kart. I think that Super Mario Kart was the first video game I ever played.
Wow.
Okay. At his place on his uncle's Super Nintendo. And I was like, you're a kid, you see video games for the first time, you're mind blown, right? Because it was also a time when video games weren't super like normalized in people's homes yet. It was still considered a pretty like nerdy niche thing.
Yeah.
And now, I mean, like everybody plays video games.
It is funny how much kids seem drawn to video games, and even people like who will like I have a cousin, Aubrey. She used to come over a lot, or her parents brought her over a lot when she was like younger, and she would sit there and play the Wii U all day, She grew out of it though, but it's funny that as a kid she enjoyed it. You know.
Oh, really? So she was a big video game fan as a kid. But
her parents never got her a console, so it was just when she was at our house, which was like maybe she came over like 3 times a year or maybe 4 times a year.
Right. Yep.
You know, and so that was the only chance she got to play video games.
Damn.
But she always wanted it. She just wanted to keep playing them and stuff. Alrighty. Well, thank you for that fun fact.
Thank you, Matt, for putting that together.
Yeah. Yep.
Cool stuff.
We're gonna hop into our stories here. First up, Call of Duty just launched. Launched today officially. Call of Duty Black Ops 6.
Mm-hmm.
And analysts are saying it could boost Game Pass by up to 4 million subscribers, but at the cost of 6 million lost sales.
Right.
This comes to us from IGN. Following Microsoft's $69 billion acquisition of Call of Duty maker Activision and Blizzard,
nice.
The pressure is now on its gaming business to deliver. With that in mind, Xbox boss Phil Spencer, has decided to take the plunge and release Black Ops 6 as a day one Game Pass game, albeit restricted to the Ultimate and PC Game Pass tiers. And I think they even got rid of that, like, you know, there was like that $1 for 1 month of Game Pass.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's gone because they don't want you playing COD for 1 month
for $1.
Yeah. This is a momentous moment, not just for Call of Duty, but for Game Pass, which has struggled for growth in recent years. Latest official figures put Game Pass subscriber numbers at 34 million.
Whew.
That's 34 million paying subscribers across console, PC, and cloud. Indeed, Microsoft removed its $1 introductory Game Pass trial just weeks before Black Ops 6's launch, as it did with last year's Starfield.
Classic.
Further evidence after recent price hikes and tier changes that the pressure is now on for Game Pass to make the absolute most of the power of Call of Duty.
I mean, it's like the biggest release of every year, right? So it makes sense that they want to capitalize on it.
Oh, 100%. It's a smart decision for them to do that.
Yeah.
100%. But in interviews with GameIndustry.biz, analysts predicted Black Ops 6 could boost Game Pass subscriber numbers between 2.5 million and 4 million. However, analysts also predict a significant impact on sales of Black Ops 6. Call of Duty is usually the best-selling game of the year, but there is now a big question mark over whether it will achieve that record once again with Black Ops 6 given its availability as part of Game Pass. Wedbush boss Michael Pachter told GI that putting Black Ops 6 into Game Pass could result in up to 6 million lost sales, based on the idea that 25% of the Game Pass subscribers might have bought the game anyway. And I think me and Matt are perfect examples of that. We were playing last night, and I would normally buy the Call of Duties. Now, in recent years, I would wait for it to go on sale because I usually just play the campaign. But we just did it on Game Pass, you know. So I'm just curious, what do you think is the calculus here for Microsoft? Is it worth it to have more Game Pass subscribers than physical sales? How are you feeling about this?
Yeah, I mean, I would have thought, right, that the numbers would have been kind of 1-to-1. You know, I would have thought that the people that were going to play COD anyway would do it the way that is like most effective or most efficient or cheapest for them, right? Like if they're gonna play COD, they're gonna find out the way to do it. They're gonna buy the game, and if they can't buy the game, they're gonna buy Game Pass if it's cheaper. And so it's weird to me that 4 million subs at most for Game Pass would equate to a loss of 6 million game sales. Like I would imagine that, I don't know, like the calculus here, like you say, it sort of implies that like the fact that it's on Game Pass,
people are out of here,
means that 2 million players don't buy it. Like that doesn't make sense to me.
I think what's happening here is I don't think Michael Pachter said it was going to. He didn't give the number of how many it was going to increase. That was someone else, different analysts.
Yeah,
different analysts are saying between 2.5 million new subscribers. All Michael Pachter is saying is that it could result into 6 million lost sales.
They're not the same people. It's just the overall sales. Yeah. Gotcha.
Right. Yeah. It's not from the same analysts.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it should probably be 1-to-1 or close to 1-to-1.
Yeah. No, I gotcha. Yeah. I mean, I think that it makes sense. I think the way that they've done it is probably how I would do it too. Like I would put it on Game Pass, but I would also get rid of the $1 for a month of Game Pass because it's Call of Duty. Like it's every year. You don't leave Call of Duty money on the table. So,
well, I've been talking with Matt and Adriano about this, and it's like I think I brought it up on the podcast before too, that they're devaluing the cost of a game. Call of Duty is no longer $80 Canadian. You know, it's now $15 a month, whatever Game Pass is.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Which is a thing where you might already have Game Pass,
mm-hmm.
and then you kind of just get Call of Duty. So it's not like it's not like that whole $15 per month is going to Call of Duty.
Yeah.
Right. So the overall value of how you perceive Call of Duty goes down.
Yeah.
And the danger is that you will no longer buy games because, like Matt and Adriano, like, why should I buy a brand new game on launch day if it's just going to end up on a service I already own? You know, there's no reason to buy Call of Duty. I have no reason to buy that game.
For a single player game, I would agree with you. But if it's a game that's got an online community that's time sensitive, then that starts to play a factor. Like if you're wanting to play COD at its peak, right, is going to be probably a couple of months after it comes out, because that's going to have filtered the people that aren't going to play it anymore. And if it's doing something right, then the people who would come back to it because it's like gotten good or whatever are going to be playing it then, right? It's the same thing with like the expansions in World of Warcraft. Like the people who resubscribe skyrocket like a week before the new expansion comes out.
Right.
And then they peak, you know, like a week after or whatever, and then it slowly just starts to tick down as people lose interest. Yeah, like if it's something that's time sensitive, right? That's where that piece comes into play. Because I think of like the Monster Hunter Wilds demo that's next week. That's like a time sensitive thing, right? Like people are going to buy PlayStation Plus to get access to that 2 days early access to play the demo, right? And you have to also consider, like, in terms of, it's two different conversations, but you are right in the terms of like devaluing the game because you view it as sort of a $0 game as long as you wait long enough for Game Pass. But you have to also consider from Microsoft's perspective, like the millions of people that buy Game Pass every month and they just don't play any games. So they're like funding the servers and they're not even using them, right? It's effectively like a donation at that point.
Well, and they probably prefer recurring payments over one-time and done payments.
Yeah.
Right? So $80 for a game is nice for Microsoft, but what's nicer is you paying for a year of Game Pass.
Mm-hmm.
Month after month, you're paying for Game Pass, right?
Yeah. And a lot of people won't bother to unsubscribe because they'll be like, something's coming out next month. I'll play that then and whatever. That's
probably their strategy, right? That's why they bought up all these studios. That's why they bought Activision Blizzard. They probably want a new Xbox Studios or Bethesda or Activision Blizzard game coming out every month to keep you on there, right? And justifying your Game Pass subscription. And
the more studios you have under your umbrella, the more chances you have to get the next Fortnite or the next game that brings people to your platform, to your subscription model, and it just keeps like printing money, right? Like
we're in the age of services.
Yeah.
I do think this is a bit of a test, though. Probably, I bet you that Microsoft themselves are kind of like, we don't know how this is going to go. They probably have predictions. They probably have models that they've done up, but they probably don't really know what the numbers are going to look like at the end of the day until it's now released and they're going to start getting that data and start pouring over it. However, it kind of lays the precedent now that Call of Duties are day one on Game Pass and they come every year. So what's going to happen with next year? If the numbers aren't good, are they going to say,
are they going to do it
no
again?
Game Pass day one?
Yeah.
That's an interesting question.
Well, they're not going to say no. They're just not going to announce it as a day one thing.
Yeah, we have nothing to announce at this time.
They'll hope everyone forgets, yeah.
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 And then retroactively, they added Modern Warfare 3 to Game Pass.
Okay.
I'm hoping they add Modern Warfare 2 because I have not finished that campaign.
Man, I
do have it on PlayStation, though.
It's so funny to me. I remember as like a teenager being like, man, who buys shooters for the campaign? Like you clearly just buy it for the multiplayer, and then you get older and you're like, who buys shooters for the multiplayer? I just want to do the campaign and I don't have time. I can't keep up with these kids. Their goddamn
you gotta deal with
the
other
movement
people
and shit. I was actually seeing some posts on socials today of people being like, dude, I played Black Ops 6 and like I think I'm too old to keep up anymore. Like I can't do the movement. And all the replies, of course, are like, move over, old Gen. It's Gen Z's turn. It's Gen Alpha's turn. Get out the way, old man. The future is now.
Yeah. And with that Omni movement, where it's like they added so much more mobility in the game, you can just be sliding all over the map, constantly, just firing your gun in any direction you want, and it's just like, whoa, I don't know what's going on. I'm getting killed from everywhere.
And I'm so glad that I got out of competitive shooters, because I'd be like, this would be the nail. I'd be like, no, dude, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. Fuck this.
The longer a shooter goes, too, the more it's just like the hardcore of the hardcore left. And so, like, Overwatch, it's like you get your ass kicked, like, all the time, just because the only people playing that game are the people who really want to play that game.
Yeah.
Right?
Man,
the best days when they have, like, a free weekend and then some noobs get on and you can...
And you're like, oh my God,
your own.
I'm good at this game again. No, literally, yeah. I played Gears of War 3 multiplayer for like 3 years after it came out. I was like, it was just me, and it was a bunch of random Americans and just a shit ton of like South Americans, people from Mexico. Like, you always knew when you were going to get your ass handed to you because you load into a lobby and it's like 5 guys on the other team. They all have the Mexican flag as their emblem. And you're like, we are fucked. We're cooked. We may as well leave. Because these are the guys that they get home every day and all they do is play Gears of War. That's all they do. We're done.
One thing I don't know if this has been done yet. Maybe it's on YouTube somewhere, but I would like an actual, like, a real Black Ops, like, squad, like an actual military squad of guys
to play
Call of Duty and play it, like, with their training, right? And see if that actually makes them good in the game or not. You know what I mean?
I feel like it wouldn't translate to...
I don't know.
A real-life combat scenario is very different from, like, an arena shooter.
100%. Because like the problem with and this has been forever with COD, is like I spawn in, I run 2 feet, someone spawns behind me and kills me.
Yeah.
Like it still happens, even to me last night when me and Matt were playing.
Yeah.
That doesn't really happen.
Happens in the field all the time. Yeah.
People don't just show up out of nowhere.
Surprise, bitch! Nothing personnel, kid.
Yeah. But I just think like clearing a room or something, like you know, how would they do with that and stuff?
I feel like it would work better for something like Arma, maybe.
More of a military simulator,
yeah.
All right, moving on to our next story. Bloober Team says it's done making, quote, shitty, end quote, games. And Silent Hill 2 remake wasn't a fluke. That's a big claim there. Yeah.
What a title.
This is from GameSpot. Bloober Team has read the nasty tweets, and it's seen the videos in which skeptics brace for disappointment. It has ignored the pessimism. The Polish horror-obsessed studio even admits it's made shitty games in the past. Now it's out to prove Silent Hill 2 remake wasn't a one-hit wonder built from a trustworthy pre-existing blueprint. Speaking with Bloober Team less than 24 hours ago after its newest horror game, Chronos: The New Dawn, was revealed during the latest Xbox partner preview, and just 2 weeks after the Silent Hill 2 remake parade of praise kicked off. GameSpot learned that the studio's next project is intended to reinforce a newly emerging narrative, the Bloober Team Redemption Arc.
I hope it's actually called that in like some internal document somewhere. This is our redemption arc. This is the plan. Stick to the goddamn plan.
I guess at this point it is a bit of like Silent Hill 2 is getting good reviews and good talk online, but it is based off of a pre-existing IP and a pre-existing entry in the franchise that people love.
A very very popular.
So for them to claim that they're just done making shitty games, it is hard to, it's like you got to prove it first.
Yeah.
You got to show us that you can make your own game, and so that's what Chronos is going to be.
Something actions, something words.
Yeah. Do you have any relationship with Silent Hill as a series?
No, I wasn't a PlayStation kid growing up, so I know, and I didn't have any exposure to it. I didn't play a ton of like the horror stuff growing up. I was much more like the actiony or like platformer kind of games. The more nuanced, like narrative driven, psychological stuff, the games that like kind of expected you to think a little bit more. I didn't like actively avoid them. I just ended up avoiding them, and I do feel like I missed out on quite a lot, unfortunately, because there's a lot of games from that era that were very popular and remembered very fondly, and things that people that I know are my age now, they think back and they're like, they can appreciate it so much more now. and I can't relate to that. But yeah, I didn't do a lot of the horror stuff as a kid.
So you have no interest in then picking up the Silent Hill 2 remake then?
No, I wouldn't say no interest. Like I really enjoyed the Resident Evil remakes that I played.
Yeah,
but
those are really well done. It's crazy.
Yeah, I quite enjoy them. But I don't know. From my eyes, like from what I've seen, it's not that I think that Silent Hill is like bad. Obviously, I just weirdly don't have much interest in it. Just like purely anecdotally, right?
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of the time, these remakes they're obviously made to like modernize an old classic for like a current audience, but at the same time, the other half is like clearly to nostalgia bait the people that played the original.
Yeah.
And I don't have that to like fuel my desire to buy it. I don't know. If I knew somebody who was like really passionate about Silent Hill and they were like, let's sit down and play the Silent Hill 2 remake, I'd be like, hell yeah, let's do it. But on my own, I don't think I would buy it.
It also bothers me that they do 2 first. Why didn't they remake 1? Like, as if you wanted to get into the franchise, it's weird to be like, try the new 2 game. It's like,
yeah,
you know, it's like, sure, I can, but I kind of want the first
context.
Game. Yeah. And then Metal Gear is doing the same thing where they're redoing the 3rd game.
3.
It's like, okay.
Yeah.
I have a theory on that. I don't think they confirmed this, but they might be doing it in chronological order in terms of the story.
Oh, yeah.
That game takes place in the 60s, you know, and then maybe they'll do Peace Walker, but that seems kind of weird to remake.
Yeah.
And they recently came out and said that it would be difficult to remake 1, and I'm like, what? What do you mean difficult?
Maybe difficult in that like people would flay them if they tried to do it, because like Metal Gear Solid 1 is like a game that people still play and say it's perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Like I feel like there's a portion, the majority, I feel, of the people who would be in part of that conversation would say it doesn't need to be remade.
It totally does, though.
I mean, it's pretty dated, but also consider it's on the PS1. Like, that's a good-looking PS1 game.
Yeah.
It's like Final Fantasy VII. I thought for years that Final Fantasy VII was on the PS2. And then I was like, oh, it's the PS1? What the shit? Oh my god.
Yeah.
But, no.
But it's. I think they were talking from a technical standpoint, though. But maybe that's given that they want to do the same thing that they did with 3, because they basically just copied the same game and just upped the assets and the art and stuff like that. Maybe it's harder to do that with that, but it's like maybe the first game then needs a complete overhaul. Take your new Metal Gear engine and you have to redo the game.
You have to rebuild
from scratch,
it.
Essentially.
Yeah. You could follow the same like level design or rough level design, enemy placement, you know, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a completely different engine.
They're reusing the dialogue from Snake Eater for the remake.
Oh, 1-to-1.
And yeah.
Right.
And if you're starting from scratch with remaking the first game, you probably have to redo the dialogue because you're going to have certain things, certain scenes you're not going to do again or whatever, you know. So yeah, maybe it is a bit of a bigger task.
There's also lots of stuff in that first game that's like the fourth wall breaking stuff that's very like of its time, and it's like, are you gonna remake the game and do the same fourth wall breaks because it's kind of been done, you know? Like the people that know it, and the people that don't, because there's the one part where you need like a code for something, and then if you take too long to figure it out, Colonel like calls you. And he's like, Snake, have you figured out the code? And he's like, I don't know where to look. And he's like, look on the back of the game manual.
Yeah.
The game manual? There's a code on the last page of the game. Like that sort of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like games don't come in manuals anymore. So like, what do you do in that sense? Snake, open up Twitter and go to the official Metal Gear Solid website or fucking page. Scroll down to their third post and you'll find a code there.
Yeah.
Like, what do you do, right?
And then there's the bit where you're facing against Psycho Mantis, and you have to unplug your controller and plug it into the player 2 slot.
Yeah,
and it's like, what are you gonna do?
You can't do that now.
Change profiles on your PS5? like, what does that mean anymore?
Snake, I'm reading your inputs.
Yeah.
Change over to that account, that second profile you have with the little girl anime profile picture. Wait, how do you know that? How can you see that? Get out of my PlayStation.
Yeah. All right. Well, good luck, Bloober team. I wish you all the best. I actually, a guy who doesn't like horror games, I enjoyed the medium. I thought it was a fine game, although a little chunky on the performance side. Because like they were constantly running like 2 worlds at the same time. Not 2 worlds.
2 worlds 2?
No. No. Which I can't believe we played and completed.
Finished. Hell
and that there were people playing it.
Best game ever, they said. Their favorite RPG
2024.
Ever. No, it was like
AD.
It was like 2022. It was a long time ago.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, it was during the pandemic.
It wasn't this year. Love this game, man. Hell yeah, brother, you're in for a ride.
But you can't say someone's not playing it right now. We don't know.
Yeah, there's probably. I should look at the Steam concurrent players right now and see how many people are playing 2 Worlds 2, because they're probably those same damn guys.
Tens of people are playing.
Best game ever made, man. Still playing it 20 years later.
God.
Maybe 10.
All right, our final story for the week. Analog 3D price, specs, and pre-order date revealed. Able to play N64 games in 4K.
Whoa!
Just how the developers didn't imagine.
Yes, true.
But it won't support Open FPGA. This is my gen. So Analog has revealed the price and specs and pre-order date for its upcoming Analog 3D console, which it touts as the first true Nintendo 64 clone console. Analog says that the sleek little device, which features a custom controller by 8-bit Do, will be able to play all original N64 game cartridges with 100% compatibility and will be region-free.
That's the big one.
It'll cost $249.99, and pre-orders will begin on October 21st. That is past, so you can pre-order it now if you want, folks. The Analog 3D's biggest selling point is its ability to easily play N64 games in 4K via HDMI, and a boon given the messy nature of N64 emulation. It's designed with a bespoke, purpose-built 4K upscaler that offers a faithful, lag-free way to re-experience the N64. It'll also include original display modes for those seeking a more authentic experience, and yes, it'll support the original N64 controllers too. It's powered by 3D OS, which Analog calls an evolution of Analog OS, featuring N64 specific features. Screenshots show that it will once again support save states, the ability to take screenshots, and other features. Have you gotten a look at this thing too? It looks pretty nice.
I've seen it
from a design standpoint.
I mean, I'm the wrong person because I never give a shit about what consoles look like.
No, fair enough.
They just sit on the entertainment unit, and I never look at them anyway, so it's fine. I don't mind another box or but like you say, right? It's like a sleek N64 looking thing. I would want to try this thing. I don't know if I would buy it. $250. It's probably American as well. Is pretty friggin' steep. But the biggest thing for me that I always lament is that like I have my old collection. I have my N64. I've got all my controllers and the cables and everything. But the N64 playing experience is so different on a modern TV versus a tube TV that it was designed for, right?
Yeah.
And the big thing for me is like that lag, the input lag, which they say says a faithful lag-free way to re-experience the N64. I wonder at that. That's my biggest question mark. Is it actually, does it feel one-to-one like it does when you're playing on a tube TV? Because like you just kind of can't get them anymore. And even if I could find one, I don't have anywhere to put a second TV down here to play on 64.
Even Hollywood is apparently running out of authentic working CRTs.
Shit.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because they break and they're kind of just done. Yeah.
Nobody's making them.
So it's a diminishing stockpile of televisions. I think what they're doing now is basically just putting a flat screen panel in there and then putting like a bubble glass over top of it. Yeah. What's funny is in these screenshots of the console itself, they have the cartridges and they're all scratched up because they're all old cartridges. Old, you know what I mean?
I mean, that's pretty legit though. Like I like that it's authentic. Like it's old media. Yeah. And that shows that they're not trying to like fake it and airbrush it, or Photoshop it and be like, oh, look at my perfectly immaculate copy of Donkey Kong 64 in this analog 3D. No, the shit is old. It's like 20 years old, bare minimum.
But it's also that's the point of this console is you take your original N64 games and put them in there. They're not going to be pristine. So this is how it's going to look on your television stand.
Here's the other thing: is like clearly, N64 games are 4:3, and games or screens now, bare minimum, are like 16:9.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder, is it going to do like what the Nintendo Virtual Console stuff does, where it puts the bars on either side, or is it going to try to like expand it out? Surely, like they say, it's just emulation, right? So surely there's not going to be like widened UI elements and stuff like that. Surely it's going to be like 1-to-1, right? I guess I should like look into a video.
I would imagine. Yeah, I don't think with the level they're going for authenticity with this thing,
mm-hmm.
I feel like it would just be 1-to-1. And they wouldn't stretch it out or anything like that. That would be bad.
But then it's weird to me to like use an upscaler to get it to 4K.
Yeah, and can that be turned off, right?
Yeah.
Because what if you don't want it to be upscaled?
I mean, if you go back and you look at like N64 games running on a CRT, like you do feel like your eyes are glazing over a little bit. Like screens were not sharp back then. They just straight up weren't as sharp. And you look at it now and it's like, this is fuzzy, dude. Like this is hard to look at. So like it's something that we're not that we definitely take for granted now is like how sharp displays are now in terms of visual fidelity and stuff, and things are not grainy, they're not fuzzy, very very precise pixels now, right? So
well, yeah, that's always the concern because like the developers and the artists took that into account. It's like they would blur the lines a bit with their designs because they knew the screen was going to smudge it and make it look different than it would on a pixel per pixel basis.
That's why so many emulators look really weird. So you see the jagged edges of Mega Man's helmet, that it would look rounded on the original art on a CRT because that's what it was designed for.
I'm surprised they can't replicate that with some sort of digital filter because it is just a visual thing at the end of the day, right?
I think they do. I've seen emulators that have filters that do that.
They put like little pixel dots like on the screen and stuff, right?
Yeah. Give it that like scan lines and whatever else.
What I like about this is like it's kind of like what we were talking about with the CRTs, where there's probably an N64 lost every day.
Yeah,
that breaks beyond repair.
Yep,
someone tosses it out because they don't see any value with it, and so it's gonna be harder and harder to find a legit working N64. And there's like talking about game preservation. Now here's a brand new console that's able to keep those games alive. Now the cartridges is another story, but people have all grabbed the what do you call it, the game files off that and made emulators and stuff. So those are probably safe.
Yeah.
But it's just nice to see this. Yeah, and this it would be cool if they did this for a lot of old consoles that just are gonna go away.
I think it would have to be specifically like the consoles that had weird media and not like discs, because like we can still read discs, but not everything can read an N64 cartridge. Yeah. I wonder what Nintendo thinks of this. Does this fall in like a legal area anywhere, or is it fine because it's like a peripheral that's just playing their media? Like, is that allowed? Because they're not claiming to be Nintendo. They're not selling games.
But imagine if, today a console came out that played Switch games. Nintendo would probably sue out the wazoo.
Would they?
Well, yeah, because they own that's proprietary stuff, right?
I guess they might.
The cartridges aren't SD cards; they're Nintendo's thing.
They'd be afraid that it would be like consuming their sales, probably, because they'll be like, people aren't buying Switches now because they can buy this other cheaper thing. So yeah, it's possible. So is there a statute of limitations on it? Is it that N64 is so old that Nintendo's like, they're not cannibalizing our sales. We're not selling N64 games anymore.
Well, not even through their online store.
Well, there's the virtual console stuff that you can have access to. Yeah, I don't think with the Switch, I don't think you buy, because the eShop for the Wii U and the Wii and everything and 3DS is all down.
Shut down. Yeah.
So they're not really selling N64 games anymore. It's just you put Nintendo Switch online and you have access to virtual console and the whole library.
Oh, is it the whole library or whatever they put up there, right?
It's not the entire library. It's whatever they've made for the Switch emulation.
It's kind of like a Game Pass deal where like you subscribe to it and you have access to a library of games.
Yeah. But it is emulation. Like let's be clear on that. It's not like playing the game 1-to-1. You're not using your old original controller. There was a lot of problems when Ocarina of Time came out on the Switch Virtual Console. Speedrunners were playing it and they're like, it's the worst version of the game. Like the performance is so bad and like, certain tricks don't work because there's like the game is lagging and it's like skipping your inputs and the button mapping is just really not good. Where like some of the C buttons are the face buttons on the Switch controller, but then some of the other C buttons you have to like hold like L1 and then hit the buttons to do like C right. And it's like it's not a very elegant 1-to-1 conversion from the Switch to or from the N64 to the Switch.
I'm curious now, why can't they just remake the hardware of the N64? Is that just not possible nowadays? Is those chips not being made? Stuff like that.
Have Nintendo remake the N64
or anyone? Because Nintendo does not make computer chips or motherboards or anything like that, right? They chose parts to put in a console that they then sold as the N64.
Yeah,
and maybe they partnered with chip makers to make certain things, right? But so I'm just wondering, is it not possible to just make a legit N64 console that just reads natively the cartridges rather than emulating them?
Yeah, probably. But Nintendo probably looks at that and goes,
is
it worth the effort? Like, what's the market for that? And for those,
I'm not saying Nintendo do it. I'm saying like some company like this. Why emulate rather than build the actual hardware? Because I was just reading further in the article and they were talking about the heroic efforts it took apparently to use this new emulation method. So I don't know.
That's weird because it's like you put your cartridge into it, but then it's emulating it anyway. So, because it's got to be, like you say, it's got like the 4K upscaler.
Mm-hmm.
So it's reading the data off of the cartridge, upscaling it, and then playing it through an emulator on board. Like,
yeah,
it sounds like a lot of work, and it sounds like a lot of input lag to me. So I don't know.
All right, well, we'll see. I think it's a pretty cool device. Looks snazzy to me. I do like a good-looking console.
I would want to try it, but I cannot justify buying it to try it.
That's expensive.
Yeah.
That's like Atari had that new console that they came out with a few years back, and it's like I wanted it too, but it was kind of expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, that's it for the news. Moving on to what we're playing. Tim, you're the only one here. What are you playing this week?
No, Ryan, it's just me. You have been imagining voices in this entire podcast. It's just me here. Hello, listener. I have been kind of getting a little bit back into Fall Guys, honestly. I talked a long time ago, last time I talked about Fall Guys in the show, how they added that like custom map maker thing. And they had this huge like push about the new Fall Guys update and that they were going to have this custom map maker where users could make their own maps and put them into a rotation. And it was going to be like curated content and put into like the official rotation of the like knockout rounds where you would be able to get the crowns and stuff. And I was like, this is exactly what Fall Guys needs. Like, it's kind of falling off. It's getting completely overshadowed by other games that are live service games that are, a relatively simple core concept for the game, and the gameplay loop is very similar. And it's getting absolutely drowned by these other games that let users make content and then let use the game as a platform to then have other players play games within that platform. You look at Roblox, you look at Fortnite. You even harken back to the days of like the Warcraft 3 custom games online, where people were making games within Warcraft 3, and that's how we have things like fucking Dota and League of Legends now, and tower defense games. So like, I wanted to check out to see if anything had changed in the like year or more since I last played Fall Guys, and super happy to report that they are actually doing that now. Because when they had this huge announcement that they were going to do all this shit, they had like a custom map editor maker and stuff, but they weren't curating anything. Like you would go and play the like custom mode, like game mode for the custom maps, and there were like 3 or 4 that were made by the devs in that like new toolkit, and then there were some that were made by like people, And that was it. There was no rotation. There was no refreshing. There was nothing. And so they built up all this hype for their like plan for the future for the game, and then they just didn't execute on any of it. And I kept saying, anytime I was talking about Fall Guys, I was like, they need to do this, and then the game will like pick up again, guaranteed. And so they are doing that now. So it's super, super cool to like boot up the game, and you get to play the custom maps, and there's like a custom game mode for it, and there's challenges for it to do like dailies and weeklies and stuff. And you can get your crown shards and your crowns in the same way you can in like the regular game modes and stuff. They're actually properly supporting it now, and it's like not super broken. Like it was, the game was just the maps before just like wouldn't load sometimes, or like the UI and the load screen was totally glitched and wrong. Like it was just clearly not polished, and they just weren't caring. So that's really great. That's really, really cool.
That's cool. Yeah,
that they're doing that. It's really good to just like hop on real quick for, you know, a couple of rounds of some goofy Fall Guys maps, because they're putting such a major focus on like the curated stuff. There's still the dev made maps in rotation a little bit, but it's like 60-40, like creative mode stuff, and then the dev stuff in the official like knockout core game mode for the game. So they're putting a really big emphasis on it, which is super, super cool. It must be wild to be like the person who made that map and see that it has like 10 million plays because it's in the official rotation. Like that must be super cool. So yeah, big ups to them. I'm glad they finally got their stuff figured out, and they're doing what they said they were going to do. It just took them a long time, it seems like. But other than that, I have still been going pretty regularly on the Deep Rock Galactic Survivors. I'm kind of getting to the point where I can pretty comfortably play like all the levels or anything on difficulty 3 out of 5. Slowly getting enough upgrades to work my way into being able to complete the 4 out of 5 difficulty dives. There's not that much in terms of content though for it at this point. The what is there is like the vast majority of the content. Although now that I look at the game on Steam, they've updated it. They've added 6 new achievements. Because they're adding 2 days ago they had an announcement about the new update, and they're adding a new map as well, the Azure Wield, and they're adding mutators as well. So that's cool. Because yeah, in its current state, it's a pretty like it's a pretty samey game. Like the levels that you play, they don't vary too much, and I've kind of found my like perfect combination of like weapons and upgrades and class to play to kind of take on any level. So there's not a ton of incentive to play the different classes for me right now, because I found my like best, you know, just best build basically. But that's okay, because I mean, like I paid like $11 for this game, so it's I've definitely gotten my money's worth out of it at 47.5 hours.
Jeez, yeah.
There's tons to unlock. So I'm just glad to see that they're continuing with the updates for it. I did also on Monday with a bunch of streamer friends, I was invited to play the early access for a game, co-op game that came out this week called Dark Hours, where you play as a bunch of robbers in semi-randomly generated maps that are like these mansions, where you're supposed to go in and steal X amount of money's worth of like valuables, and also like grab certain, you have sub objectives as well, so like grab certain valuable items, or like find incriminating documents, because you're working for this like underground boss type character who wants you to go in and find these documents and like destroy them, or you know, grab this land deed or whatever else. But at the same time, it's kind of like Phasmo in that there's a different randomly picked like supernatural horror going on in the mansion. So you can come across like weeping angels from Doctor Who, where they're like statues that'll chase you when you're not looking at them. There's like shadow monsters. There's like a classic, like very Resident Evil looking thing where it's got like no eyes and a big maw and like blades for arms, and it's blind, but it will chase you down if it hears you. And then you've got your standard like ghost and stuff that will track you down and can go through walls and will try to like scream and freeze you and stuff. And it's that type of multiplayer game where it's co-op and it's not like you can be competitive in the moment if you want to, where you can like, if you're running to the exit or the safe room or whatever and the monster's chasing you, you can like turn around and with whoever's behind you, you can like push them so that they get like knocked back and then you can like kind of sacrifice each other to the monster if you want to. Because you have your certain like amount you can fit in your backpack. And then you have like the big bag, the communal bag that can carry a ton of stuff. So you basically are like running around the mansion. You're trying to solve these semi-escape roomy kind of puzzles where it's like you have to search through these bushes and you might find a key, and then that key opens this door and you go into that door and you find like a wall panel that you can open up, and there's a fuse and you can take that fuse that powers that room and take it to another room, and then that opens a gate in another room, and it's all like pseudo randomized where there's different sort of modules for each level and they get stitched together in different ways. So that part adds to like the replayability of it. But you want to collect a bunch of valuables and fill up your bag. And at the end of the level, if you succeed, anyone who survives, you split the haul from what's in the bag. But whatever you keep in your own personal backpack only goes to you. So if you want to be like cheeky about it, you can take a couple of high value things, keep them in your backpack, don't put them in the communal bag. And then everybody splits the communal bag, but you kept, 20 grand worth of hippo statues in your backpack. And now you just get that 20 grand. So it's interesting. It was really, really fun. We had some good laughs with it, on Monday, and, I would be interested to see some more updates come out for it, but overall pretty like promising concept.
Yeah, that's cool.
And I would definitely, if you like Phasmo and that sort of thing, and you also like games where it's co-op, but you can be a bit cheeky if you want to be, I think it's it's got lots of potential for like playing with your friends and stuff.
Man, the best was like Little Big Planet when you could just like slap people.
Oh yeah, you just wind up your arm and then whack and like knock them off cliffs and stuff. Yeah,
yeah, it's always fun to have just a little bit. Now you don't want too much, just a little bit of screwing over your friends. Yeah,
a little bit. It's the Mario Party effect, right? Where it's like we're all having a good time until I steal your fucking star, and then I do it again the next turn. I do it again the next turn. Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah, that's largely been it. I'm just really looking forward to next week when the Monster Hunter Wilds demo drops. Like I said, for PlayStation 5 early access, if you have PS Plus, you get to do it for us Eastern Standard Time. It goes live at like 11 p.m. on Monday. So
that's bizarre time.
Yeah, well, it's based off of like Japan time, I think, because we get it at a decent time because we get it from 11 p.m. Monday until 11 p.m. on Wednesday, but for like UK time, it's like 3 a.m. So they're kind of shafted a little bit.
Like you gotta be a dedicated Monster Hunter fan.
Yeah,
staying up until 3.
It's a short window too. It's only 2 days for the early access for the PS5, and then it goes live on PS5, Xbox Series, and Steam. Halloween, the 31st at 11 p.m. Eastern time for us, which is again like 3 a.m. GMT or whatever. And then it goes through the weekend to is it Sunday? I think it's Sunday night, or is it? Yeah, Sunday night at like 11 p.m. as well. So for me, short of Monday, it's going to be a full week of Monster Hunting, and then a weekend too.
Dang.
Really, really excited to play with the weapons that I'm familiar with and see how different they are, because from the video footage that I've been watching, they seem similar, but like much more like little nuanced controls here and there, like being able to reposition like mid attack combo and stuff like that, and the different attacks stringing together in ways that they haven't in previous games, rebalancing things. I mean, I could get into it because I know like technical things about certain weapons that people who don't know anything about Monster Hunter aren't going to give a shit about, but just a lot of rebalancing overall in ways to encourage people to not necessarily just like lock into the same combo all the time, and like different combos will be different like use cases depending on like what you're fighting, where you're fighting, and encouraging, like just not having just like the objectively best combo for this kind of weapon across the board because they let you carry 2 weapons with you on your hunts now, right? So I think they want to encourage people to like swap stuff out on the fly for what makes sense in that moment. Or maybe you're just bored and you're like, I don't want to do greatsword anymore. I'm going to pull out a light bowgun, and then you go with that. But yeah, super keen to dip my toes in all the weapons. And it's funny because they showed that off on the Monster Hunter stream that was on Tuesday this week. It was like 10 minutes of new info. So they showed off new locales, a couple new monsters, and then announced the demo. And that's all I was hoping for. I was just like, it's gotta be. If they're doing a demo, it's gotta be now, because the previous like 4 or 5 Monster Hunter games have had demos before the game came out. And sometimes they were like super short, and sometimes they were really long, but there was always a demo before the game came out. And we're like less than 4 months from the game now, I think. Actually, just over 4 months, because it comes out end of February. So they're cutting it close this time, and it makes me wonder if they're going to do a second demo period for it as we get closer, like first thing new in the new year or whatever.
What platform are you getting it on?
I'm buying it on PC, but I'm going to play the PS5 demo for the first 2 days, and then when it goes live on all the other platforms, I'm going to play the demo on PC for streaming it and stuff. But it's cross-play, so it doesn't matter what you get it on, because you can play it with everybody. It's the first cross-play Monster Hunter game, which is super, super cool.
And what version are you getting here? Are you getting the base game, the deluxe, premium deluxe edition?
I think I pre-ordered the deluxe, because the premium deluxe is like, you're kind of...
cosmetic packs.
You're kind of getting everything, plus like you're effectively like pre-ordering future cosmetic packs that will come out throughout
to be released at a later date.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
So it's kind of weird. I don't know.
But then it says premium bonuses. I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
Just like some consumables, probably.
Maybe. I don't know. They typically give away the consumables for free. They'll be like, our game is doing really well. Here, everybody, have some free consumables. They do it in like every game. Even Monster Hunter Now, the mobile game, did that. Gave people a bunch of free stuff because they're like, hey, we had 3 million people download Monster Hunter Now. Thanks, everybody. Here's some consumables.
Nice.
Yeah, that's been my week, and that's my week coming up.
Not too much for me. Just Black Ops 6 was the newest game I've played.
Yeah.
Me and Matt jumped on right at we kind of jumped on right at midnight. I had downloaded, or I had pre-installed it with Game Pass.
Right, yeah.
And that just installs the launcher. Call of Duty has this weird like launcher thing. It's partly why the game is so big, because you have a launcher and then you can have the several games installed at the same time, as well as Warzone and Zombies and the campaigns and multiplayer. They're all separate pieces now, right? So it's a big mess. Anyway, I pre-installed the launcher thinking that was enough for the game. I guess it wasn't, because even after the fact, there were several updates, big updates, tens of gigabytes of updates.
Yeah.
And then midnight rolls around and I have another 40 gig update. So that took me like 40 minutes to download and install. But we did get a couple matches in. Matt destroyed a bunch of people. You can actually see it on Day One Patches,
on the TikTok, right?
Instagram and TikTok and stuff. Yeah. He just threw a grenade and then just all these like numbers start.
It's like 5 kills
flashing on screen.
Yeah. Yeah. Classic COD,
it's
dopamine.
It's been a lot of fun. It feels like a good old COD. It feels like we're freaking, right after high school again here for me.
We're back, baby. Back in the saddle.
Yeah. Other than that, not too much. Overwatch, a little bit of Fortnite. Star Wars Outlaws definitely feels like it's on the back burner now. It might be fading a bit.
Oh no. Getting shelved indefinitely.
Yeah, I'm hoping once my PS5 Pro comes in, because it has an update for PS5 Pro.
Right.
That might, be okay, I'll jump in. And they did release a new update this week, with more fixes and more improvements and quality of life stuff. So every update has been better. So could be worth getting back into. That's about it though.
Yeah, fair dues.
A little bit more Dead Space.
Yes, I meant to mention I was playing the Dead Space remake one night this week. Which it's a pretty faithful remake. Came out a couple of years ago, I guess. Like I've played Dead Space so many times, and it's just like, this is Dead Space gameplay.
It looks good though. It looks really good.
Yeah, I like that you can wear the classic suit if you want to, and then you just look like super low res in a very high res world. It's kind of like when you're playing Spider-Man and you put on the like comic book skin. You're like, something here is out of place. I can't quite put my finger on it.
Is that evidence that we're not in a simulation?
Yes.
That everything in our world that's not digital looks the right resolution and the proper proper graphical style.
It's all the same art style, yeah.
Yeah.
Imagine if life was like VR chat and you just see like fucking anime characters running around next to Godzilla, next to, you know, the little Disney's Robin Hood next to like it's all we're all the same.
Here's another question though. Here's another question. If we are in a simulation, think about how good the universe looks right now.
Yeah.
You walk outside, everything looks crystal clear.
Yeah.
Everything's pristine, super high-res textures. You get up to a brick and you can see every little thing in there.
Yep.
But what if we're actually bad quality graphics?
We just don't know what good looks like.
If we're in a simulation, what if this is actually bad quality graphics and the real world is magnitudes better? What if we're freaking original Tomb Raider, you know, and the real world is like Red Dead Redemption 2?
Ooh.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
Who knows?
We can't be in a simulation. The processing power you would need.
The odds are we're in a simulation. Just strictly odds.
It's not the odds are. Like it's a non-zero chance.
No, the odds are because think about all the digital worlds we have we only have one universe.
Yeah.
That we know of. But how many digital worlds do we have? Every video game is a digital world.
Sure.
There are thousands, if not millions, of digital worlds.
Yeah.
To every one real universe.
Okay.
Where are you expecting to end up? Let's just say, for the sake of this argument,
in a video game or in real life.
For the sake of this argument, let's just say there's 20 million video games.
Okay.
20 million virtual worlds in our universe.
Yeah.
And if you had to roll the dice and end up in one of the worlds, which one do you think you're going to end up in?
The real one.
Why?
Because I'm just lucky like that.
No, it's 20 million to 1. 20 million to 1. So the odds are we're in a artificial universe.
Hey man, the lottery is 20 million to 1 sometimes, and somebody still wins.
Mm-hmm. All right, Tim. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for going through Matt's big ol' fun fact.
Big ol' trademark.
That was a good one. I like that one.
Yeah, it was cool. It's cool. I learned something today.
And where can you be found streaming on the Twitch?
You can find me at twitch.tv/sidetracky. No, the sidetrack. Twitch.tv/the-sidetrack.
We didn't mention we were playing Remnant.
Yeah, we played Remnant DLC. I always forget. I always forget that we also play stuff together.
The stream games always seem to be forgotten. Yeah,
it's a shame. Remnant fucking kicks ass, man. Remnant 2, Game of the Year 2023 for me. It's so good.
It's over. 2023 is over.
It could still be my Game of the Year from last year. What do you mean?
I thought you were nominating it.
No, I'm saying it is my Game of the Year.
Okay,
for last year. Yeah, the new DLC stuff seems really cool. I like that for the Dark Horizon. It really seems like they played Shadow of the Erdtree DLC and they're like, damn, look at this verticality. We got to do this because like there's so much verticality to it that they have you fly around with the gliders and stuff. But it's cool. I'm never going to say no to more new Remnant stuff. I'm actually kind of sad that it's the last one because, I mean, it's been out for a while. They've supported it.
The studio didn't die, did they?
What's that?
The studio didn't die, did they?
No. They're chilling. They're chilling. But yeah, we're gonna reach a point where I'll be like, you know, I think I've played Remnant 2. I think I'm done. Yeah. And then they'll announce Remnant 3, and then I'll be like, I gotta go back and play Remnant 2 again for the old time's sake. But no, I've really, really enjoyed every single hour playing that game. What a treat! It's just right up my alley. It's so fun. What was I talking about? Oh, Twitch. .tv/sidetrack. If you are keen on some Fall Guys stuff, we did a big community day today. Actually, we played with a big public lobby with friends, playing some knockout stuff and some squads. It was really, really fun. Big recommend if you liked Fall Guys back in the day and you wanted something fresh, something new. The curated stuff is really, really good now, so definitely give it a shot again. Dust off the old Fall Guys in your Steam library, or I guess you can't buy it on Steam anymore now. It's all Epic Store. Oh, and then there's a mobile version too. I realized you have to like download the Epic Launcher app thing on Android and iOS, but you can do it, and then you can play, you know, Fortnite or Fall Guys through that. Works surprisingly well. I was playing it on my phone because they had a challenge right now for if you play 5 games, you get a skin if you play on the mobile app. So I did that to get the skin. It's kind of sick too. You're like a hologram little fall guy. It's cool. But yeah, worth a reinstall, honestly, to give it another shot. And then yeah, like I said, next week, tons of Monster Hunter. So if you're a fan of Monster Hunter the series, or you're a newcomer with Wilds or World and you want to check out the new stuff, we'll be doing a lot of it.
And yeah, we'll be doing more Remnant on twitch.tv/DayOnePatchMedia.
That's right.
Wednesdays, 9 p.m. Eastern. See you there. All right, we're out.
That's it. Thanks for listening. Have a good week. Peace.